Chapter 2. After 4 long years of studying, John Khang was finally done with school. Computer engineering wasn't what he would have chosen to do with his life if life were about choosing fun, but the money would be good. As the oldest son, his parents relied on him to provide a more comfortable life for their family. He looked forward to traveling abroad once he helped them pay off some debt. It was the least he deserved. John wanted to celebrate this accomplishment with his friends. Everyone was hitting the downtown bars where graduates would get drinks on the house. However, his mom wanted him home early to prepare for a blessing ceremony the following day. Relatives were coming to tie special blessing strings and celebrate his success. Just for a little while, John convinced himself. He wanted to have some fun for a change. Studious, obedient, and respectful, John was always a good son. He didn't even have a girlfriend because it might distract him from doing well in school. Tonight, John thought, was the night to celebrate all that hard work. Maybe he'd even meet a nice girl. 3 bars and 1 club later, John Khang was drunk, but he was also happier than ever. He drank all night on someone else's dime and danced with several beautiful women. He even got a phone number from one of them. If he could find it tomorrow, he'd call and ask her out on a date. He finally felt like an adult for once. At first, there were 3 of them singing and hollering as they staggered through downtown Sacramento. A few times, John stopped and said,
"Hey guys, we're not supposed to sing at night."
"A few times?" a friend asked.
Why not?
"A few times," John answered.
"Because a ghost might hear us."
He was a college graduate now, but he was also a Shaman student. When John was sober, he took these old superstitions very seriously. One of which was, don't whistle or sing at nighttime, or a ghost would come. His buddies laughed, and soon the singing resumed. John laughed and sang along with them. Finally, the 2 friends, who lived in the same dormitory, jumped into an Uber and headed home. John still lived with his family, so he had to find his own way there alone. He was hungry. His friend Sam served hot dogs to all the drunks on the weekends. Eating now would save him from making noise in the kitchen later and waking his mom, who would only lecture him about being drunk.
"Which I never do."
John slurred as he turned the corner into the park. If John were sober, he would have noticed the lights dimming. The further he walked, the darker it became. It was also strangely quiet and deserted, all details difficult to see when the world was a little blurry. Without thinking, John began whistling the tune to Graduation by Vitamin C. Despite the summer season, it was cold. He tucked his hands into his pant pockets and continued looking for the hot dog stand. Above him, the trees began to move. The branches shook as though something was leaping from limb to limb. John. Somebody called his name. John stopped to look around. There was no one in sight. He turned and resumed walking. John. The leaves above him bristled. His chest began to burn, and the tiny hairs along his neck stood on end. His spirit guides stirred uncomfortably. He stopped and looked up.
"Run,"
they urged. John stumbled and fell back onto the pavement. From this angle, he saw the legs hanging from the tree. Pale feet swung back and forth like a child on a swing set as its owner hummed the graduation song. John scrambled to his feet, remembering the old rules. Never sing or whistle at night, or... A young woman leapt down from the tree in a plain white dress that fell to her knees. Her limbs were thin with no visible joints. As she hopped forward, her slender neck bent at an awkward angle. Her features lacked distinction outside of hollow black eyes and a mouth gaping wide. "John," she sang in her dry, dead voice. John screamed and ran. He sprinted down the pathway until he saw the outline of the hot dog cart ahead. The owner, Sam, was busy roasting dogs on the grill. John cried out, waving his hands.
"Sam, thank God you're here."
He slowed down as he arrived at the hot dog stand. Sam never looked up. He kept roasting the dogs as though he hadn't heard a thing. "John." Against his better judgment, John glanced over his shoulder. The ghost continued hopping, stiff arms reaching forward. She was only a few feet away from him now. John heard Sam put down the grill tongs.
Sam!
John turned back to face the man. What he saw nearly stopped his heart. It wasn't Sam at all. Instead, it was a creature like the one that chased him, pale and thin, with unnaturally smooth skin and eyes that were black like death. It reached for him with long white fingers. Then it opened its mouth and screamed. As the cold fingers touched his chest, another pair of hands caressed his backside. He shoved condiments at it and sprinted away. A group of women became visible a few yards away. They stood together under a tall lamppost.
Hey! Hey!
John cried out, waving his arms frantically. None of the women wore shoes. Their bodies were thin and shapeless beneath dirty gowns. For a group, they were oddly quiet. By the time John saw the gaping mouths and black eyes, they were racing toward him. John screamed and ran across the lawn. Unfortunately, the combination of fear and alcohol did not serve him well. He stumbled over every rock and change of elevation, nearly falling several times. Every time he looked back, it was more horrifying. The ghosts chased him like a long-awaited meal. What John didn't know was that this was all a ploy. The ghosts enjoyed feasting on the energy from within his shaman body, but their ultimate agenda was not their own. They were following orders, driving the shaman toward death. The old demon was clear. He wanted every single soul. John Khang heard the loud honking before he saw it. They had chased him right into the middle of a busy road. As he ran in front of the oncoming vehicle, the young man thought of only one thing. He wished he had stayed home and celebrated quietly with his family. He was going to miss them very much.